This part of what I was talking about yesterday, as well as today, is my favorite thing to talk about. This is really what I enjoy the most. Talking about leadership, talking about developing your organization, taking your business to another level. Over the last 18 years in my career in this industry, it's interesting the different levels that you will go through. It's like the different levels of life. You know, you come into this world, you come onto the planet, you come in as a child, you're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and then you go through adolescence, you become a teenager, then you become a young adult, and you go through different stages. It's very similar to your stages of your life and your career, or what you do here in Lexus, or what you do in network marketing. Ultimately, and again, I'm going to cut right to the chase, for you to have, we talked about this yesterday, for you to have a large organization, remember we talked about this yesterday, getting paid while you sleep, having that long-term residual income, being in a position within just a few years to do what you want to for the rest of your life because you have an organization of leaders, of people, of distributors, and ultimately customers, satisfied customers that are continuing to use the product every day that rewards you, that compensates you. So, how do you get to that level? This is what I want to talk to you about. How do you develop these leaders? How do you get to that pinnacle level? We talked a little bit about yesterday the characteristics of what you look for. You as a leader, and then your people. The kinds of people that you need to have in your organization. What are the characteristics that you look for? You guys remember that? Okay. So, what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, there's two phases here. First of all, is paying the price. Is paying the price. Write this down. What price would you pay? What price would you pay for freedom? What price would you pay? What price would you pay for freedom for you, your family, your children, your extended family, your significant other? What price would you pay to have that for the rest of your life? To do what you want, with whom you want, wherever you want, at any time you want, all the time, anytime. What price would you pay for freedom? What price would you pay? If you knew you only had to pay it for just a few years. Most people out there, most people in traditional business are going out with a job, J-O-B, spells what? What does J-O-B spell? What does it spell? Job. Just over broke. Just over broke. Or just obey your boss. Job. So people are out there, they've got their job, they're working. They're doing this for 30 or 40 years. They're paying a price. No freedom, no independence. Someone owns them, someone owns you with that job. And in traditional business, how long do you have to pay that price to get where you want to go in traditional business? Most traditional businesses fail within their first 18 months. Most do. The ones that do survive, the studies show that it takes 5 years before they're turning a profit. 5 years before they're turning a profit. For you to become a physician, for you to become a dentist, before you become an engineer and a lawyer, what price do you pay to become a professional in those professions? How many years in university? How long? 6? Somebody 10, somebody 4. I'd probably go with a doctor who spent 10 years, right? But you think about it. They have spent 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years at school. They get out of school and they're in debt. They're not broke, they're in debt. You do this, you pay the price here for 3, 4, 5 years. If you're pioneering a market right now, you can do it in 2, maybe 3 if you mess up, but you stick around. Just for the next 3 years. pay the price, do what you have to, you can have all of that freedom. But what price would you pay in those 3 years? What price would you pay? How many one-on-ones are you prepared to do? How many two-on-ones are you prepared to do? How many home meetings are you prepared to do? How many phone calls are you prepared to make? How many restaurants are you prepared to go to and prospect? How many miles are you prepared to travel in your car? How many events are you going to go to? How many meetings are you going to go to? How many relatives are you prepared to listen to who think you're crazy for doing this? How many times are you prepared to listen to that unsupportive spouse or partner who won't support you in this? How many times are you prepared to listen to them? How many functions, family functions, are you prepared to miss, sacrifice, not see, be a part of maybe your children's events or functions, weekends, for maybe the next 2 to 3 years? What price would you pay? How many airplanes would you get on? How many countries will you go to? What price will you pay? What price would you pay for freedom? Think about it. For just 2 to 3, 4 years. Well, ask Air Andre how many miles he's put on his car. Ask Elish how many phone calls he has made. Ask Norina how many home meetings she has done. Ask Joe Garcia how many family functions he's missed. Ask Angel Lee how many times he's been on a plane. Ask Angel Lee how many times he's had to leave his mother. What price have these leaders paid? What price would you pay? What price would you pay? Are you prepared to pay the price?
Yes!
I'll be back. Are you prepared to pay the price?
Yes!
We're loading up over here. Okay. For the next 2 to 3 years, are you prepared to pay the price?
Yes!
The next one. The next one. You're prepared to pay the price. But the next thing is why. Why? Remember we talked about that yesterday? We talked a little bit about it today, but we really talked about it yesterday. Is why you're prepared to pay the price. Is it freedom? Is it more than freedom? It's whatever it is that's inside you that drives you. You've got to find out what's inside you that'll drive you. Because this thing will drive. And if you're with Andre, you will drive very fast. Air Andre. But what price would you pay and why? Because you will pay that price. You will pay that price if you know why. So, ladies, gentlemen, gang, the most important thing again is coming back to why you will do it. You've got to know why. Excuse me. Then you will pay that price. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide, and that's remaining a leader. So, number 1 is becoming a leader. Number 2 is remaining a leader. And remaining a leader is developing leaders. Developing leadership. Let's take a look at the first slide here. Mentor. Mentor, mentor, mentor. I'm going to go through about 14, 15 points that are very, very key here to you developing leaders. Your organization will be based, the size of your organization, the success of your organization will be based on the number of leaders that you have in your group and your team. It's a given. You cannot have an army without generals. You cannot. You cannot have a family without parents. You cannot have a corporation without vice presidents that will be answering to, say, the president or the CEO of that company. So you need to have that inner circle of people. Your organization will be always based on the number of leaders that you've got in your group and your team. So you've got to develop leadership. First thing, number 1, mentorship. you have to have a coach. And you think about this, when you were a child, for all of you ladies, all of you fellows, when you were a child, did you have an idol? Did you have an idol? Did you have someone that you looked up to? Maybe it was a rock star. Maybe it was a football player. Maybe it was a movie star. It was something. But that was an idol. When you become an adult, it becomes a mentor. And whatever you focus on, whatever you put your head to, is kind of where you go. And this is one of the most important things that you'll need to do in you becoming a leader, remaining a leader, is to always have that mentor and that coach. I've got a family, like a life coach. My life coach is my parents and my grandparents. That's my life coach. But my business coach is a gentleman by the name of Jeff. He was the guy that helped me. Every time I would get into a situation, any type of challenging situation, I would think about what he would do. I'd go back to his teachings. It's role modeling. This is key, key, key. If you don't have a mentor now, find one. And there's a lot of mentors that you have in this room. There's a lot of tremendous leadership in this room. You ladies have got some incredible women in this room that you can look up to. You've got Barbara. And is Barbara at the back? Where's Barbara? Barbara's at the front. Barbara, an incredible leader, one of the great, great leaders in our industry that came from another company. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and how you can find other leaders. You've got Norina, another incredible leader. Fellas, you know how many leaders that we've got here in this room. Find a coach, find a mentor, find a role model that you can model yourself after in this business. Go to the next one. EQ versus IQ. This one is huge. This one is really, really big. Remember the book we were talking about yesterday? It's called The Millionaire Next Door. The Millionaire Next Door. It was talking about in this book how people in the United States who became successful financially successful, going out and building a great, great business and became millionaires. And they asked them what were the top reasons why they became financially independent. And they listed the top 30. Number one was what from yesterday? What was number one? What was it? Honesty, integrity. Remember? Do you guys remember?
Yes.
Okay. Number 4. By the way, number 28, which had virtually no importance at all, was having a formal education. Having a formal education. But number 4 was having the ability to get along with people. The ability to get along with people. EQ versus IQ. IQ is formal education. EQ is personal education. That is the ability to get along with people, deal with people, understand people. One of the best that I know is Joe Garcia. Tremendous EQ. Always positive, always up. Narina's the same way. Andre's the same way. Alicia's the same way. Jim Horn is the same way. His partnership with Chuck Hanson, we talk about that all the time. Tremendous EQ. Angel's the same way. A book called Emotional Intelligence. Write this book down. You may want to get this one. Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goldman. And he talks about emotional intelligence versus that IQ and how important that is. How important it is in the ability to get along with people, understanding people. And as leaders and developing an organization, you want to develop your EQ versus your IQ. And that's the patience, and that's all of those characteristics that we talked about yesterday. EQ versus IQ. Much more important is your EQ versus your IQ. System. When I was here the last time in November, I was with Bastian. Bastian, we were in Serbia, I think. We were having dinner. Remember the restaurant? And we came outside of the restaurant. We were in your car. And Bastian asked me, he said, Dan, how many people in your organization? This is last November. And I said, I think about 200,000 distributors. And he shook his head. How could you have 200,000 distributors? How could you function? How can you run a team with 200,000 distributors? I said, quite simple. Now think about this. If you want to develop a big organization, you need consistency through your group. But the two keys to developing that big group and that big organization, number one is system, and number two is finding good people. Finding good people. But you have to have a system. My first 30 days in the business, I found it tougher in that first 30 days in the business in dealing with 100 to 150 people because they were all calling me. But it is easier today, and I've got close to 300,000 distributors on my team because we have a system. And people plug into that system. They tie into that system. Now you think of all the great armies in history. Take a look at all the great corporations that we have in the United States. They all have great systems. They've had great systems. So you need to have your people system dependent, not people dependent. System dependent, not people dependent. They'll get into the business mostly because of you. Joe did a great job in talking about that. But for you to have a massive, massive organization, they need to be plugged into the system. You can't work with every single person on your team and in your group. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Does this make sense?
Yes.
We'll come to you guys in a minute. Okay, so system is critical. Let's go to the next one. Lead by example. You want to write this down. People will do what you do, not what you ask and tell them to do. People will do what you do, not what you ask and tell them to do. If you want an organization of retailers, be a strong retailer. If you want an organization of great recruiters, you need to be a great recruiter. If you want great leadership in your organization, you need to provide great leadership. Your people will do what you do. You need to set the pace. The speed of your organization, the speed of your group will be dictated by the speed of the leader. Next one. Finding good people. Okay, there's two ways in developing leadership. You find good people in developing your organization, you find good people, or you develop really good people. Here's some examples that we have here in the room. There's some tremendous leadership that we've got here in the room that were great leaders from other companies. Tremendous leaders. Barbara is one. Andre is one. Alicia is one. That is finding good people. Finding great leaders. You can find them in our industry. There's lots of them out there and they're dissatisfied. Or you can develop them. And we'll talk about that in a second. Some more that we've got in the room. Joe Garcia was not a great leader when I found him. He became an incredible leader over time. He wasn't. Joe will tell you. He couldn't lead himself out of the shower. He had a difficult time with that. But right now, he's leading an organization of over 75,000 people strong in 32 countries. He developed. He developed over time. Finding Angel Lee was like finding gold. It was like finding platinum. That was finding a great leader. So you either find them or you develop them. It's those two. Let's go to the ones that you develop. That's the next slide. Developing good people. Joe is a perfect example. As Angel had talked about yesterday, about the tortoise and the hare. Joe was definitely the tortoise. But he is solid as a rock. His organization is solid as a rock. He knows. When we first met, as Joe shared with you today, when he was saying that he was shy, he was terrified. He was always afraid to talk to people in the very beginning. I remember meeting him 12 years ago. He was a very shy guy. But through personal development, personal growth, and because he had such a huge why he wanted to do this, he developed an incredible organization and developed himself first. And remember that. You need to develop yourself first before you develop your group. You need to work on yourself every single day. We'll talk about that in a second. That is very, very important. So you find good people or you develop good people. Finding Jim Horn was finding an incredible individual, an incredible leader. There's other great leaders that we have in this room. Some have been found, some have been developed. Let's go next slide. Personal development, and this is the key. Personal growth, personal development, that's working on yourself as much, if not more, than the business. That's working on you. The books that you read, the tapes, the CDs that you listen to, and the people that you surround yourself with will determine who you are and who you become. Joe talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I went through the same thing. The books that I read after I got out of high school and after my first year in college. Do you know that the average person, I think I shared this point with you yesterday, the average person today in North America, once they've gotten out of formal education, will only read 5 books for the rest of their life. They stop working on themselves. And when I met my personal coach 18 years ago, he asked me, one of the first things he asked me, he says, Dan, what books do you read? I said, I'm not sure. And he said, what was the last book you read? And I told him it was Stephen King. And he said, you don't need to read that. Read this. And he gave me the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. If you've never read it, read it. If you've read it, read it again. And if you've read it, read it again and read it again. And make sure all of your people read it. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That was the first of literally hundreds, probably thousands of books. I'm reading 4 different books right now. But also the tapes that you listen to, the CDs that you listen to, the stuff that you feed yourself every day, how important is that? I am a firm believer if what goes in is what comes out. If you want to be in great shape, we talked about it yesterday, what do you need to do every day? Or on a regular basis? You need to work out. If you want to nutritionally have a good body, what do you need to do? Feed yourself good food every day. It's the same steady diet that you need to feed yourself of good information that's coming into you. What you read is really what's going to come out. Good in, good out. Junk in, junk out. Bad in, bad out. It's a little bit like a garden. You take a look at a garden. Garden doesn't care what you plant, but whatever you plant is what's going to come out and what's going to harvest. You plant a weed, what are you going to get? Plant a weed seed, what are you going to get? You're going to get a weed. You plant flowers, what are you going to get? Beautiful flowers. So it's what you put in your head. And I don't read a lot every day, but I read a little bit every single day. Joe's reading a book. I was in his room last night at about 2:30 in the morning talking to Terry LaCour. And it's called Something to Soar, right? It's those little things that you do every day that you feed yourself from the books that you read and the tapes that you listen to and then the people that you surround yourself with. This one is key. It's a little bit like your mentoring, tied into the mentoring. A study was done in the United States just a few years ago. This happened. They asked these people to name the 5 closest friends that they had. Write down the income of those 5 closest friends, divide by 5, and within a few percentage points, it was their income. You are who you surround yourself with. If you want to have the flu, hang around with somebody who's got the flu. If you want to be rich, hang around with somebody who is rich. If you want to be spiritual, hang around with spiritual people. If you want to be a good person, hang around with good people. If you want to be a bad person, hang around with bad people. If you want to be funny, hang around with funny people. If you want to be fun, hang around with fun people. Does this make sense? It's that law of association. Gang, it is such a simple thing. I promise you, your life will change over the next 3 to 5 years if you do 30 minutes every day of reading a good book, listening to a good tape or a good CD, and watch who you surround yourself with. But the books and the tapes is a great start. Great, great start. Personal development. Okay, next one. Leaders are readers. Books, tapes, CDs, and law of association. Signs of a leader. Okay, Narina, you and I talked about this. Yes, we did. Signs of a leader. You sponsor somebody into the business. In the first 7 days, I'm going to give you some clues. The first 30 days, I'll give you some clues if this person could be a potential leader. These are simple, simple signs. Very, very simple signs. Narina knows this. We talked about it the night before last. First one, This is such an easy, simple thing. This is the first clue. This person has the potential to be a leader. Number one, they're phoning you. You're not phoning them. You're not chasing them. They're chasing you. They're calling you. Think about it. Now think of the organization that you have right now. Narina and I talked about it. And I asked her, think of your leaders, Narina. Think of those people that you brought into the business. And she even went back and thought about what she was doing when she first got into the business. Was she calling her sponsor every day, calling her upline? Yeah, about 14 times a day. I remember when I brought in, how many people have heard of this gentleman named Costa back in Canada? Incredible guy. Incredible guy. I worked with him. I became his coach. I wasn't a sponsor, but I became his coach real quick. And I brought him into the business. He made a little over $200 his first month. He had some issues. He had some challenges. He was only 29 years old, and he was just learning to speak English. He had just moved to Canada in the last few years before that. It was right after 9/11, and he was Iranian. His wife was from Afghanistan, and he's talking about an opportunity. Talk about having an issue or a challenge knocking on doors about the opportunity, and you're from the Middle East and you're 29 years old. No one wanted to talk to him. But he had a huge why. Massive, massive why. Full-time, broke, 6 figures in debt, made a little over $200 his first month, full-time. By his third month, $500. By his third month. By the end of his first year, he was over $10,000 a month. After 1 year. 6 weeks ago, which is after 3.5 years in Lexus, 6 weeks ago, this gentleman from the Middle East, who couldn't speak English up until a few years ago, joined the business after 9/11, who was 6 figures in debt, broke. His check 6 weeks ago for the week was $146,000. Not the month, the week. For 90 days, he phoned me 12 to 15 times a day. He'd phone me every day, every hour, on the half hour, on the quarter hour. He was always calling me. Joe and I still speak on a regular basis. Your inner circle will always be communicating with you on a regular basis. So that's the first clue. They're calling you. Number two, this is another clue that this person could be a leader. The first 7 days, just little clues that come up on the radar. This is so simple. The first 7 days, they're into the business, part-time or full-time. You ask them this: how many times not have they sold the product, but how many times have they shared or demoed the product? They've shared or demonstrated the product. If they have not done anything in selling, sharing in particular, that's the activity, sharing the product in that first 7 days, not a good sign. But if they told you, yeah, I shared it 4 times on Monday, 6 times on Tuesday, 3 times on Wednesday, not closing the sale, not selling it, but they're sharing the product. They're developing themselves. The activity of retailing. It's one of the cornerstones to our business. The third one, third clue, in that first 7 days, is ask them how many times have they shared the opportunity. Shared the opportunity. You've asked them how many times they've shared the product. Now ask them how many times they shared the opportunity. Yes, I shared it 5 times on Monday, 4 times on Tuesday, twice on Wednesday, 8 times on Thursday. But in that last week, if they haven't shared the product, haven't shared the opportunity, not a good sign. Not a good sign. Number 4. In that first week, in that local area, and even if they're long distance and they're in a new area where there isn't any, they would have done one. And that's a meeting. That first 7 days, they're at all the meetings, they're on all the calls, they're at all the events. Now, maybe there hasn't been an event in that 7 days. Maybe there hasn't been a conference call. Maybe there's not a local meeting in that area. And if there's not, the sponsor needs to make sure that within 7 days, they have done a meeting, a home meeting. The home meeting queen in Europe is Narina. How many a day? What? Several a day, every day. What's going to happen to her business in 3 to 4 years? Do you guys know where Narina and Boss Jan are going to be in 3 years? They are going to be millionaires. They'll never have to work again. A lot of you will be in their organization, but a lot of you will have other people in your organization that have become successful as well as yourself because of their leadership. And one of those core fundamental leadership qualities that you have is the home presentation, the home meeting. So that meeting is key in that first 7 days, and that's number 4. Okay? So those are 4 keys that you look for. Next one. Finding a long-distance leader. My friend Daria, we were talking about this when we were in Dallas. She said, Dan, I want to build some business in Poland. And Joe was talking a little bit about this in sponsoring long distance. But sponsoring and finding leadership, kind of two of the same thing. You need the first one, but then you need the second one if you want to have a great business, and that's the leadership. Before you would get on a plane, before you would get on a train, before you get in a car, before you're going to drive 5 or 6, 7, 8 hours long distance to go work with that person, they need to commit to 3 things. If someone is on the phone with you, they've communicated with you, they said, yes, I want to open up this city. I want to open up this market. I want to open up this country. I want to build my business here. I need you to come in and help me out. Come in and spend some time with me. They need to commit to 3 things. First one, product. I will not get on a plane, train, get in a car, and drive much more now than 3 or 4 hours unless they've committed to these 3 things. And number 1 is product. They'd have to come in at least as a gold, but if you're getting on a plane, if you're going to be spending half a day on a train, they would have had to have come in as a charter, equity charter, founder, or at least come in with enough product, which would be probably at least 8 gold packs, where they would have at least cycled once. I'll explain a little bit more of that in a second. But they need to make a commitment to the product. You cannot, and because I went through this, you have no idea in my first 3 to 4 or 5 years how many times I made a car trip, I got on a plane, I got on a train, and the person said, yes, I'm going to get some product, but I need you to come out and help me. So I'd come out and I'd give them the product, but they never committed to the product because they're not committed to the business unless they committed to that first. So number 1 is they commit to the product, and it's critical. Number 2, they commit to people. They commit to people. So that if you're going to come out to spend 2 days with that person that's long distance, 2 or 3 days, they will commit that over the next 2 to 3 days, they'll be putting people in front of you morning, noon, and night. Morning, noon, and night. And I'll tell you, if they have just purchased 7 gold packs, I'm pretty sure, and it'll happen just about every single time, they're going to be putting people in front of you because they want to move their gold packs. Okay? Does this make sense?
Yes.
The leaders know because they've gone through it. Does this make sense?
Yes.
I'm crying. You're still working on this one. Okay. We're going to come back to it. So number 1 is product. Number 2 is people, that they're going to be putting people in front of you. But number 3 is time. Write it down, time. So if you're going to be going into that market for 3 days, 2 or 3 days, they've got to clear their plate and give you every bit of their time, all of their time. They can't have any distractions with families, with kids, with the pets, with another job, another business, whatever it is. For whatever, because your time is so, so important. See, you can replace anything in life. It's incredible. You can replace love. You can replace your spiritual connection. You can replace money. You can replace anything. But you can't replace time. It is a major, major asset. So when you're going into that market for those 2 days, 3 days, make sure they give you all of their time. So the first one is what? They've got to commit to what? Number 2? Oh, gosh, guys. Let's get. First one is what? Second one is what? Third one is what? Perfect. Those 3. Okay, next one. Time. This is one of the biggest areas where I messed up in my first 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And then I got a training from some great, great leaders in this industry. And one of the biggest mistakes, you need to write this down, that I was making is that I was spending too much time with the wrong people. I was spending too much time with the wrong people. You know what I was doing? I was saying too much for too long to too few. I should have been saying less to more people. Your time is so, so important. And you as a leader are only going to have so much time in the people that you're going to be working with. Your inner circle, the people, your leaders in your group that are going to be running your organization are the people that you're going to be working with the most. But the second group that you're going to be working with is the new people, the new blood, the people that you're bringing in, as well as the people in your organization that they're bringing in. That's where your focus is going to be. And the next one. Get to the front of the room. We're going to leave that there. Okay, we're going to bring it up, then get to the back of the room. This one's big. Now, you guys, remember the very first time you went to a meeting, you went to an event, the very first time you got involved in this industry, you came into the room and you're standing at the back and you're by yourself for the first time. And you see the person standing at the front of the room with the microphone. When I first went to my very first meeting, I stood in the back of the room, I saw the person standing in the front of the room. My sponsor beside me said, "You know what, Dan? This is my first day." They said, "The man with the mic makes the money. The man with the microphone makes the money." He said, "You need to get to the front of the room. Eventually, for you to be a leader, you need to get to the front." So you had to lead from the front. I had to eventually get to the front of the room and have my team and my organization in that room. Does this make sense so far? Okay, you want to get to the front of the room and then you've got your people. Okay? Now, for you to become a great leader, you need to develop leaders. Write this down. You're not one till you got one. You're not one till you got one. So you're not a leader till you got a leader. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing you want to do is get to the front of the room. And get to the front of the room, and I know it's going to be tough. For most of you, it was horrible for me. I had a very, very tough time doing that very first presentation. Joe died at his first presentation. We had to get him back to life. He just completely passed out. It was unbelievable. I was the same way. I had to give my first presentation at a hotel. There was 4 people. There were supposed to be 40 people, but 4 showed. My sponsor, the one guest that showed up that I invited, and the person that was folding and unfolding the chairs at the back of the room. Those were the 4 people. And that was my presentation. That was my first presentation. Worst one ever done. Ever done in the history of this industry. But the second worst was the second one. I got a little bit better on the second one. But eventually, when you're at the front of the room, what do you want to do? You eventually want to get to the back of the room. When you get to the back of the room, what do you want to do? You want to have your people at the front of the room. Does this make sense? So when you get your leaders to the front of the room, now you go to the back of the room. What's the next step? You want to get your leader, who's now at the front of the room, to the back of the room. And they've got their leader at the front of the room. What happens to you? You go build another room. Does this make sense?
Yes.
See how this all happens by design. You do it from your home meetings. It starts with home presentations. Narina is teaching people how to do home presentations. Once she's got them doing a home presentation, excuse me, she goes and builds in another area, building home presentations. It's the same thing in a hotel environment. So you lead from the front. Set the example. Set the pace. Get to the front of the room. But then get to the back of the room. Be proud. Because now you've got your person at the front of the room. And I'll tell you, there's nothing more exciting than when your people start doing it at the front of the room. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. Narina, we talked about this as well. Think about it. When you have your people succeed, when you get your first award in this business, you're jacked, you're excited, you're fired up. But when your people get there, you're more fired up. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. Because if you're a father and your boy goes out and kicks that, in football and scores the goal, you're more excited for him than if you had scored the goal. You fathers understand that? Does that make sense? We don't have children, Robin and I. But I know with my nephews and I know with my nieces, when I've seen the extended part of our family, when they go out and they do something, I go absolutely crazy. You're going to go through the same thing with your organization and your team and your leaders. So you get to the front of the room, you get to the back of the room, you get your people to the front of the room, then get them to the back of the room, and then you go build another room. Okay, next one. Remain humble. As a leader, my coach, his name is Jeff, I hooked up with him about a year ago, and we sat down, and I found out that his net worth now was into the hundreds of millions of dollars. His passive residual income, this is his money that was getting paid on just about every single month, whether he worked or not, was nearing now $1 million a month in residual income. He's in his early 40s. He's single, ladies. And I asked him, I said, Jeff, you've got all of this. Now what? He said, Dan, don't ever forget where you came from. Don't ever forget where you came from. Number 2, always remain humble. Always remain humble. As a leader, remain humble. Confident, but humble. Number 3, he said, don't ever stop growing. Don't ever stop growing. But as you become a leader, don't let your ego get in front of you. Always remember where you came from and remain humble. Go to the next one. Fun. They said in life, there's different ways that you can have success. You can achieve to be happy, or you can happily achieve. Achieve to be happy, or happily achieve. Have fun, but get it done. Can you guys all stand up? Everybody stand up? All right. I want you guys to think about this weekend and what's happened so far. I want you to think about what is going to happen to your business now that you've set out your goals. You've got your dreams all crystallized and where you want to go. And how much fun that you've had doing this. Did you guys have fun doing this weekend? Did you have fun?
Yes!
Okay, one more. Did you guys have fun?
Yes!
Did you guys have fun?
Yes!
On the count of 3, all of us together. 1, 2, 3. Are you having fun?
Yes!
One more time. Are you having fun? Yes. Thank you. Bye. Okay, now.